The first year, 1945. When I was born, the world was at war. I was the third child, the family's new star. We lived in a basement, my mommy and me, with one tiny window and not much to see. My sisters with Mamo, the Navy had Dad. United at last, the family was glad. Rations, zoot suits, a 40-cent wage. The world was quite different when I was your age. 1 year old, 1946. By the time I was one, the World War was done. The hot one was over, a cold one begun. Europe was split into East and West zones. A girl born in Dallas, another new Jones. Get back to normal was everyone's hope. Were the freedoms we saved for everyone? Nope. Most women quit working, put back in their places. Soldiers united, went back to their races. 2 years old, 1947. Changes occurred before I was two, though I was too young to have any clue. Young couples dreamed to buy their first home. Houses were built from Brownsville to Nome. We settled in Austin in one of those houses, with a dog to catch sticks and a cat to catch mouses. Look down in your brownie, hold it just right. A photo would work if you had the right light. 3 years old, 1948. Roads were made of gravel, bathrooms outside. We raised our own chickens and then ate them fried. Milk on the porch, ice in a box. We rarely wore shoes, so no need for socks. 2 sets of fountains for colored and white. Food shipped to Berlin, but only by flight. No TV, no CDs, the basics for toys. Dolls for the girls, guns for the boys. 4 years old, 1949. The Soviets dropped a bomb that exploded. Now they knew the secret we doted. We hated the commies, for us they'd do in. Our best chance for peace was then the UN. On TV were shows bringing laughter and tears, but we wouldn't get one for several more years. Most things could be bought for a dime or a nickel. From a jar you could pick out your candy or pickles. 5 years old, 1950. The decade was new. We could do as we pleased. We figured out how to make slices of cheese. The old ways were starting to lose some of their charms. Folks flocked to the cities, leaving the farms. A golfer named Babe took the game in a blitz. The World Cup was shocked when the Yanks beat the Brits. After pleas to the North were all disregarded, Korea in turmoil, police action was started. 6 years old, 1951. Go Valley was home when I started to school. I never once thought that the walk there was cruel. Be home for supper, stay out until dark. We had enough pets to fill up an ark. Cranks on car engines, sidecars on scooters. Factories were proud to be good polluters. Black and white TVs were all mostly gray, but most of the time we'd just rather play. 7 years old, 1952. Dressed up in an outfit to look just like Hoppy. Unbelted I sat in my dad's old jalopy. Movies in 3D with red and green glasses. Junior pools offered free swimming classes. I played all day long with pigtailed Camille. My best friend a tomboy, but not a big deal. With Malcolm I'd play, and then we would fight. But Charlotte and Norma would soon set him right. 8 years old, 1953. The Korean conflict came to an end, with neither side willing to give in or bend. Bells, racks and fenders, I loved my new bike. Running beside me were pups Mamie and Ike. Drips from the ceiling were caught in a pail. A song questioned, how much was that doggy for sale? Johnny Jupiter, Buffalo Bob, and Clarabelle. Hey kids, what time is it? And then we would yell. 9 years old, 1954. While Dad went to Dallas because of his job, we lingered on Koenig and lived with a mob. We joined Dad in Big D. In a duplex we stayed. He bloodied his knuckles on the soapbox we made. McCarthy accuses, Brown takes on the board. Elvis emerges. From then on he soared. In coonskin, Davy grinned a bar till he fled. We added God to the pledge that we said. 10 years old, 1955. We pouted when getting shots named for Salk. Teachers would scold us if anyone talked. A bus riding lady got busted, we heard, and Ford showed off its brand new T-Bird. With something called fluoride, our smiles could be bigger, while the king of the cowboys rode off spurring trigger. Upper tens, grapettes, and Pepsis with cherry. Disneyland made us all love a fairy. 11 years old, 1956. We moved east to White Rock. From then on we stayed. For the first time, football was played in 6th grade. The tornado's winds our old house couldn't stop. A picture in life showed it, no top. Pink poodle skirts, black jackets of leather, white t-shirts and socks, nobody named Heather. I noticed the girls, I wondered what gived. I raced on my bike to see where she lived. 12 years old, 1957. Sputnik's beeps spun the world in a loop. We discovered the frisbee and then hula hoop. In Gaston's halls, I was one of the warriors, not knowing some of these kids would be lawyers. Jukeboxes, turntables played music we heard. 78, 45, 33 and a third. The king was on Ed. Girls clamored for Elvis, but they wouldn't show us his wiggling pelvis. 13 years old, 1958. The Rockers were champs. We had a good year. We should all do our best. Coach Hill made it clear. Churning the ice cream, our arms would get sore. The air was conditioned, but through a screen door. We pampered our hair, greased by the gobs. The boys all got licks for making spitwads. Elvis was drafted, minus his hair. At Marilyn and Jane, we just had to stare. 14 years old, 1959. Hawaii, Alaska, we now equaled 50. The stars rearranged the flag to look nifty. From Batista, Castro took over the aisle. To call, we needed our fingers to dial. Barbie was started, the Edsel was done. The music had died, the nation was stunned. There were plenty of reasons to dislike Coach Neal. He thought only of size and not how we'd feel. 15 years old, 1960. Some folks at a Woolworth's decided to sit when told, "We won't serve you people, now get." Confirmed all alone, not something to boast, I nervously said Christ was killed by the ghost. For 65 cents I would fill up their sack, till one bag of vertigreen did in my back. We tried to hold back a soapbox of brick. On TV the public could choose Jack or Dick. 16 years old, 1961. A Russian became the first man in space. It was time for the Eagle to pick up the pace. Kennedy yearned for ways to save face, but his Bay of Pigs was a total disgrace. The wall couldn't stop the flea from the east. The border guards' bullets would not make them cease. My mom kept me still when mumps I did catch. It gave me a chance to perfect Etch-a-Sketch. 17 years old, 1962. Missiles in Cuba, the world on the brink. The president stared and made the bear blink. As the world teetered from crisis to calm, Jack played with Marilyn and sent forces to Nam. Luther League, Chrysalis, and Pastor Roy Quill. I owe them a lot, I remember them still. Drive in to the restaurant, drive in to the show. Sneak your friend to the trunk, snuggle your beau. 18 years old, 1963. Coke dates and movies, dances and games. I noted the dates and most of their names. Nonviolent change, a king had a dream. Camelot ended, a lone gunman it seems. Cruising charcoals was everyone's fad. It suddenly ended when I was a grad. Dad's son in college, the first one he'd send. Mom didn't cry until right at the end. 19 years old, 1964. Class favorite, cheerleader, fraternity pledge, a car on my leg, ruined socks that were Ted's, a war on poverty, poll taxes denied. The mop tops arrived and all the girls cried. I rolled downstairs, fell back in my chair. I pulled stupid stunts no other would dare. Stitches and swelling, my eye was shut tight. Charlie stayed up with an ice pack all night. 20 years old, 1965. Dodgers burned cars. Watts mobs showed their might. The folks in the Northeast were left without light. Music was sound. Society was great. Vegematics were made to chop what we ate. I drew them naked, the fat and the bony, but I was not happy living so lonely. Until Nora and Penny, I drank milk and ate chips. $5 to live on. With my thumb, I took trips. 21 years old, 1966. With Kirk and Spock, boldly we'd go. The effects were cheesy, but we didn't know. In our hand, we could hold a machine that would add, but the prices were high, much more than a tad. I made a mistake that cost me a wife, but I found one much better for the rest of my life. We started apart more than 400 miles, but stayed together to make Carries and Kyles. 22 years old, 1967. The Mideast was changed in so many ways. A war was ended in only 6 days. A waif named Twiggy was on every cover. Meanwhile, I wrote every day to my lover. She never knew what she might get in the mail. A heart, war battles, falsy, toenail. Trash everywhere, strung sausage and wine. With a roommate like that, I made the couch mine. 23 years old, 1968. With the death of the dreamer, the nation awoke. Time to take heed to the words that he spoke. 4 days of freedom, and then I was wed. No job, no income, no roof on my head. No lottery yet, and I was 1A. Nobody would chance it or give me my day. An itis of some kind, a baby expected. We were delighted they stamped me rejected. 24 years old, 1969. My concepts of life, the good and the bad, were drastically altered. Now I was a dad. Into the world were introduced Carrie, a beautiful child, but not very hairy. A big step for me, a small step for Neil. We watched it on TV. It gave us a thrill. And speaking of steps, I took the wrong one. ACL torn up, meniscus was gone. 25 years old, 1970. Dallas got beat in its first Super Bowl. A rock for a pet, some people were sold. Disco, I shudder, it just didn't rock. Streakers wore nothing, not even their socks. Music on 8-tracks, the video game. Disaster at Kent State, with no one to blame. Paul's announcement, we were struck to the core. It's official, the Fab Four was no more. 26 years old, 1971. A white staff, it seemed, was not the right hue. Unhappy to leave, it delighted me too. The first Wildcat soccer, the groundwork, we laid it. With 64 boys and not one could play it. Force 'em on buses, segregation be curbed. But instead, everyone moved out to the burbs. The most horrible day, with our family we cried. So briefly we had her, and then Mindy died. 27 years old, 1972. The Godfather showed us all who was boss. The Miami Dolphins, no tie and no loss. Ping-pong diplomacy, Nixon displayed us. Watergate cover. Tricky Dick had betrayed us. Carrie loved Kyle as much as she could because she was sick in the doorway she stood. Beverly declared, with this one she's done, now that we had both daughter and son. Today, your life may be filled with similar stages, some equal, some not, when you are my ages. Parents and in-laws, sisters and brothers, those uncles and aunts and cousins and others. Without them, no one would get very far. The same goes for you. They were who you are. Whether your trek goes as mine did above, put family first. That's where you'll find love. Who most do you owe for the sane and the odd? It's simple. Remember to always thank God.